Blunt Force is an upcoming World War II VR shooter. I got the chance to try it out in the demo in the Summer of Games festival on Steam. There are some good things and some bad things that I want to talk about. The main thing that this game has going for it are the graphics. You probably noticed them already, and they really are high end for an indie developer. You get to visit several environments in the demo, and they all have great attention to detail, high quality models, assets and textures. It has some nice lighting and material effects. You've got metal that looks like metal, wood that looks like wood, and glass that looks like, well, glass. It's got a high quality feel with no real issues that really stand out. There's a moment with a tank that rolls past, and it really impressed me with how good it looked. There's an option where you can see some of the in-game models, and you can have a look at a plane and a tank in the demo. Standing in front of these vehicles in virtual reality is actually surprisingly cool. There's also a shooting range which lets you try out a selection of guns with some challenges, and all the guns have excellent attention to detail and have a solid look and feel when using them. More on this later. The only thing I would like to see, which may already be an option but the settings were locked in the demo, would be to increase the super sampling in game. For any developers working in the Unreal Engine, for some reason if you're using Steam VR headset like the Vive or the Index, outside super sampling is ignored. No matter how high you set the super sampling settings in Steam VR, it doesn't make any difference in game. Please add an option in the menu to super sample in game. I would say going up to 1.5 pixel density is at a minimum. The sound's also pretty good. The voice acting's average for the most part, with some that could be improved.
Of course, please take a seat by the table and wait a minute.
Of course, sir. Just give me a second.
British OSS and Nazi ABVAR codes in the same book. This was surely used by the Nazi mob.
But the sounds of the guns are good. When you're in a gunfight, you can hear bullets whizzing past your head, water falling down from above, and again, it has some great attention to detail. Did I mention that a tank rolls past? Unfortunately, it goes downhill from there. Before I continue, I want to say that this was a demo and it's not the final version of the game. But at the same time, I really don't recommend putting up a demo in this state. It actually does more damage than good. A demo should be a vertical slice of the finished game. Something to show people what they can expect when they buy the full version. And when you see some of the issues I had in this demo, I think you'll agree that it wasn't ready for the public to try yet. Let's start with the hand interaction. Some people will have already noticed that it's got floating hands. I do personally prefer a full body and arms, but I will say that I'd rather have floating hands than poorly implemented full arms that don't align with my body in real life. I've seen plenty of people dismiss games because they use floating hands, and the reality is when you're in game you really don't notice it. You notice it more when watching someone else play VR than when you're actually playing it yourself. Half-Life Alyx is my favourite game ever made, and that has floating hands. The problem with the demo was that when you pick stuff up, it wouldn't sit in your hands properly. Some stuff does, like this pear or this cigar, but some weapons, and especially magazines, wouldn't, making reloading very difficult and clunky. You also have the option to force grab stuff from a distance, but to get an object to actually highlight would be very finicky. You have to have your hand in the perfect position for it to work. Let's talk about the weapons some more and reloading. You've got two options for reloading guns, Arcade and Challenge. Arcade simply requires you to move the magazine near the gun and it will reload it. Challenge is more realistic, so you need to slide the magazine in the bottom of the pistol for example, and rack a slide if the chamber is empty. But because the magazine is floating in front of your hand, it makes it very difficult and clunky. Some of the guns don't even line up with your hand and float above it. I'm sure this will all be fixed, but again, it shouldn't be put into the public in this state as most people aren't going to look past it. When you do get the magazine lined up though, the actual animation of moving the magazine in place actually looks good. All the animations for cocking back a pistol, loading a rocket launcher, reloading and racking an MP4 machine gun all look good. The shotgun works realistically, so you have to pull back the foregrip to open the chamber, load a shell, move the foregrip forward, and then put the other shells underneath. It all needs some fine tuning and polishing so it feels good, and then the guns will be satisfying to use. Another thing worth mentioning which really made things feel extra clunky, which would be quite an easy fix, is the option to hold to grip. The default is set to toggle, so with the index controllers you have to squeeze them to pick something up, and then you have to squeeze them again to let go rather than just opening your hand like you normally would. Sometimes when I'm firing a gun, I would squeeze the controller too tightly, causing me to drop the weapon. The demo was also teleport only, and even the teleport itself felt clunky, with you having to wait for a couple of seconds before the marker starts to appear. Free locomotion would be essential for this game. No developer should ever release a game with teleport only, and if you're going to have teleport, you need to make sure it's good. Take a look at Half-Life Alyx as a reference point for how it should be done. Another note to developers: if you do have both options for free locomotion and teleport, make sure that the player has to select which one they want when they launch the game for the first time. If you have it default to teleport and having smooth locomotion in the options, you're going to get some people who don't look and then they're going to leave you a negative review. Having free locomotion option for both head and controller aiming is also advised. So the question is, if the hand and weapon interaction felt slick and polished, and it had free locomotion, would it be a good game? Before I try to answer that, let me run through what you get in the demo. You start off in a cafe in the Netherlands, you take a seat, eat some cake, watch a cool cinematic, and now you're in the future during World War II. Did I mention that a tank rolls past? Then you fight off waves of Nazis. You go into a shop across the street, and now you go back in time. You have to solve a puzzle to get a key, you open the door, and now you're back in the future, fighting waves of Nazis. You have to climb up a section of a wall, read a book, and fight off waves of Nazis. The entire thing takes around 15 minutes. If this is the introduction section, then it's okay. If this is how the entire game plays, then it's going to get a little boring, and no matter how good the game looks, it's going to get repetitive. Right now, when you get in a gunfight, you put in one spot, and enemies come at you from about a 90-degree angle. In an ideal world, we'd be traversing through levels fighting off Nazis along the way, but obviously this takes an incredible amount of time to build up a long game like this. I recently talked about a cyberpunk VR shooter called Silicon Rising. That has levels that you go through, but as you progress you have to clear out an area of enemies before you can move on. This is fine because as you go through the levels, they throw a variety of enemy types and they come at you from different angles. They throw grenades, all forcing you to have to switch cover and move around. You can't just stand in one place and survive. We've seen this type of gameplay in many non-VR games, the recent Doom games being the best at it. What makes them fun is the challenge, the way you have to switch up your weapons and tactics on the fly. If blunt force progresses in difficulty, the levels open up more, with lots of options for cover, more variety enemy types. Even if it's just moving into a new area to clear it out, as long as they switch up the levels and the encounters and challenge the player, it could be a good game. It's all going to take a lot of playtesting to get the layout of the levels right and the difficulty balance between challenging and frustrating. This is the thing that separates the average to the good to the great games. Blunt force has tons of potential. It's all going to depend on the design decisions the developers make. I'm still looking forward to seeing what the full game has to offer despite the issues in this demo. I'll finish the video off with some highlights from the demo. Did I mention that a tank rolls past?